So, guys, if you can hear me, today is Wednesday, the 15th of November. It is day 630 of Russia's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. And the difficulty that we are having is that the domestic internet here, the house internet, is out. It seems to be out. And so I have jury rigged the phone, the Ukrainian phone, to use the Kyiv network for both the computer, which appears to be live on YouTube now, and for the live. And so, hey, F and Hell, how you doing? Still my favorite handle on TikTok, F and Hell. You guys, so guys, here's the deal. I'm using the Kyiv network, the cellular network that my phone is on, and I've got the YouTube channel now up and running through the phone. And so it looks like I got a solution here. But I had to use the Ukrainian phone, so the picture is not great. And we just got to get through the night with it. That's all there is to it. So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. I am Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. And in Russian hardware losses for the day, in the last 24 hours, the Russians have lost, according to the Ukrainian MOD, 15 tanks, 18 armored personnel vehicles, and get this, a new record-breaking, absolutely whopping 58 artillery pieces. 58 artillery pieces, a new record for a 24-hour stretch by the Ukrainians. You can add to that one Su-25. They lost the 8th Su-25 fighter aircraft at $35 million apiece in the last 3 weeks over the skies of Avdiivka. So that hurts. There is an awful lot of talk right now going on. Oh, Parda must be here. I just had a heart on my face. Hey, Parda. There's an awful lot of talk going on around about peace talks, about it's time for the Ukrainians to sit down and talk peace. First of all, nobody should be telling the Ukrainians what to do at all. This is their fight. It's their country. It's their war. It's their blood that's being spilled to keep the territorial integrity of this nation intact. It's not our place to tell them when it's time to give up. Further, for all the peaceniks out there who are crying, talk to the Russians, bullshit. Do you know what you are saying when you say talk to the Russians? You are sanctioning their kidnapping of Ukrainian children for the worst possible reasons. You are sanctioning their war crimes, the bombing of churches, of hospitals, of civilian infrastructure, of people in their cars driving home from work. That's what you're sanctioning. That's what you're saying, let them get away with. That's what you're saying. The new standard for warfare is that anybody can commit any crime that they want at the expense of anybody, and the world has nothing to say about it. Shut the fuck up with your talk of peace. There is no peace with terrorists. Ask the Israelis. Unreal. It's unreal to me. Stop it. Weather blinds the drones. The fog in the morning over the Dnipro blinds the drones. The rain The wind makes it hard for them to fly, and it makes it impossible for them to see. Using conventional cameras. I was thinking about this because our boy Zaluzhny says that what he needs is a technology edge, right? He needs a technology edge to break the stalemate or to prevent this war from becoming a stalemate. And he said the words, we can see what they do, they can see what we do. Everybody can see what he is doing. But it occurred to me, suppose there was a way for the Ukrainians to see what the Russians were doing while the Russians can't see what the Ukrainians are doing. And there's a couple of pieces to that, or there's a couple possible solutions to that. Now, look, the first thing is we know that the Ukrainians have worked on some kind of new breakthrough that lets them land and take out of the sky the Russian FPV drones. We know that. That's happening. That's a real thing. We got video over the skies of Avdiivka, and we should talk about Avdiivka a little bit here. But we have video of over the skies of Avdiivka of Russian drone operators out in the field trying to recover the drones that the Ukrainian electronic warfare has disabled and brought to the ground. They're out there looking through the grass for them, right? So that's one piece of the puzzle, one way to blind the Russians. But how do you make it possible to see through the fog, through the rain, through everything else? And the question came up today. I was talking to my buddy Michael Z. And I said to Michael, of all the bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, what are the only bands? You got microwaves, you got radio waves, you got X-rays, you got gamma rays, you got ionizing radiation, right? Ionizing radiation comes into the room, it'll kill you before you know it's there. You don't have a sensory capacity to sense ionizing radiation. Stingrays, there you go. What are the only bands of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can perceive? Well, visible light, right? Visible light. Red, yellow, blue. Tsar crown. Love the Tsar crown, Russell. Thank you. Red, yellow, blue. Of all the bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, my friends, the human animal, having evolved on the plains of Africa, is equipped to see just those three frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's it. That's all we got. But that's why we build machines, right? All those machines that will diagnose you in the hospital without cutting you open. Although that nuclear medicine. Remember Predator? Remember Predator? Remember how Predator could switch that thing so he could see infrared, ultraviolet, visible spectrum, whatever. Could it be? Is it possible? Think about night vision. Is it possible that somebody has developed a drone that sees in infrared and then fog don't matter? Is it possible somebody's developed a drone that sees in ultraviolet so rain don't matter? I don't know the answer to that. But wouldn't it be something if they had? Wouldn't it be something if that were in the arsenal of the Ukrainians? And the Ukrainians can see in the snow and the wind and the rain and the weather that's coming, and the Russians can't. So I don't know that to be the case. But when Zaluzhny was talking about a technological breakthrough, an edge, and how they can see each other and everybody can see what everybody's doing, it occurred to me that maybe something like that was, maybe it's not even visible light. Maybe it's a drone that uses sonar to build a sonar map of the environment. Why not? Why not? Would be my question. And I'm sure there's all kinds of limitations and reasons on that we don't have it yet. But if somebody's been working on it, and God knows the Ukrainians have been working on a lot of shit, that would be very exciting to see. Just a thought. Just a thought. I don't know it to be true. The UK Ministry of Defense says that the Russian production of a laser-guided artillery shell has increased, and that as winter weather sets in, Russian access to precision munitions will be a key factor in its operational performance. So the Russians are thinking about this too. And the Russians are in process of mass producing a laser-guided artillery shell. Whether or not they can do it, whether or not they can put it into use and into production, into regular production, remains to be seen. But they are doing everything they can to produce them and get them to the battlefield. That much is clear. The ISW says that Kherson news of retreat. Now, remember the other day we had that situation, Monday, I think it was, where on RIA and RCB or RBC and TASS, all the state news agencies in Russia reported basically that the Russian armed forces were retreating from the left bank of the Dnipro. The ISW has analyzed this event and is suggesting that it's likely that there are likely one of two explanations. Either it's something that the Russians are talking about, and somehow it leaked into the information space early before the order was implemented, or it was a feint, a ploy by Russian operatives to make the Ukrainians believe that they were weaker than they are, to try to draw them into a conflict that the Russians thought they could then crush them. That is the thinking from the ISW, the Institute for the Study of War. The Institute for the Study of War goes on to say that weather is a complicating factor for both sides. Falling leaves are reducing camouflage and cover. Strong winds and rain are blinding the drones. Mud is deterring movement. And so we should expect to see that the pace of attacks and the progress of those attacks will slow but will not stop with the winter. That is the expectation from the Institute for the Study of War. There is a stark contrast between the effectiveness of the dictator when the dictator wants something done and the slow-moving nature of democracy in response even to the worst crisis. And we see that playing out in spades with the need for artillery here in Ukraine and artillery shells. The Russians needed artillery shells. The dictator went to his friend Kim Jong-un, the other dictator, said, I need 1 million shells. The dictators agreed. The shells were delivered. Within 30 days, the shells were on the front line. It was back in March that the EU promised Ukraine 1 million artillery shells. Since then, they have delivered only 300,000. And today, the EU Council for Foreign Affairs acknowledged that they would miss their target, that they would not deliver the full 1 million artillery shells by March as promised. which is a huge problem for the Ukrainians. And Zelensky made no bones about blaming European bureaucracy for the failures. So, God knows we are full of the desire to help, but we have to be able to follow through. We have to come through. Just like with these 60 Gepards. I mean, thank God that the United States has purchased 60 Gepards. Here's the good news, right? The United States has purchased 60 Gepards from the Jordanians and is giving them to the Ukrainians. Now, how many of them are working? We don't know. I would hope at least half of them are working. That would almost double Ukraine's supply of Gepards. If all 60 were working, it would more than double Ukraine's supply. As winter approaches and Russia threatens mass drone attacks on civilian infrastructure and missile attacks on civilian infrastructure, the presence of those Gepards will mean the difference between life and death if they have ammunition. If they have ammunition. Rheinmetall has delivered tens of thousands of rounds of 35 millimeter ammunition for the Gepards. They have promised another 40,000 rounds by the first of the year, and all up by March, 300,000 rounds. Is that enough to get us through winter? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how many drones Moscow has or how many they're going to sacrifice against Ukrainian air defense in an effort to overwhelm it and strike their targets. We talk a lot about all the promises that have been made to the Ukrainians. We got to deliver. We got to deliver on them, or it's an exercise in futility. The main centers of fighting have been Avdiivka, Donetsk, and Kupiansk, as well as action around the Bakhmut sector. In all these areas, the Russians are pushing forward with wave after wave of attack. Why are they attacking in the north, especially Kupiansk? I mean, there's what's the strategic advantage there? Avdiivka, there's a strategic advantage. You can understand Avdiivka. You can understand Bakhmut. The political win with Bakhmut was huge. Holding on to it and expanding the area of influence is important. That's understood. But Kupiansk? Could it be that the Russians are doing everything they can to put the pressure on the northern fronts in order to draw Ukrainian troops away from the Kherson advance? Does Russia know that it doesn't have the men or the machines to send south? And so it's ratcheting up the pressure everywhere it can in an effort to draw the Ukrainians away from the area where Russia is most vulnerable in Ukraine, which right now is looking like Kherson and Crimea. We don't know. But Avdiivka is clearly a battle of the drones. Drones are making forward positions for the Russians untenable. They get into those forward positions. They get a toehold over the railroad tracks into Stepove. They occupy a few houses. The drones come in and blow the houses to bits. They occupy the trench line just west of the railroad tracks. The drones come in and eliminate the trench line, is apparently what's been happening, and push them back. And there's a couple of reasons for this. The Russian electronic warfare equipment is too far from the front line to be effective against the Ukrainian drones. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian electronic warfare equipment is right up front in the forward position, which is also the most defended position. And so the Ukrainians are hunting uh, Russian electronic warfare equipment while protecting their own. And this is letting them blind the Russians in the skies over Avdiivka, while at the same time giving them complete freedom of movement, as the Russian mill bloggers are complaining. They're making the same complaints in Kherson, by the way. The same complaints in Kherson, that the Ukrainian drones own the skies and their own drones can't get off the ground. Russia is ramping up the oppression of the press, restricting election coverage only to those registered journalists with Kremlin approval. You have to be a Kremlin registered and approved journalist to comment or report on the upcoming presidential election in Russia. Hysterical. Russia said that one of its primary objectives in attacking Ukraine was the demilitarization of Ukraine. Meanwhile, what we are seeing is Russia's continued demilitarization of itself. Kaliningrad is the latest victim. The S-400 and S-300 missile systems that normally are in Kaliningrad guarding the exclave, the number of cargo flights leaving Kaliningrad from mainland Russia has increased sixfold in the last 30 days. So apparently every piece of military hardware that you can get out of Kaliningrad and to Ukraine is on its way. Further, the Russians have now pulled all their equipment out of Armenia. Now that the the situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan has been resolved. All the BMPs that were in Armenia, including a bunch of Armenian BMPs, were loaded onto trains and have been sent to Ukraine. Russia is in the process of demilitarizing itself, throwing every man and every machine that it can at the front line in an effort to break the will of the Ukrainians, which is as solid as a titanium steel rod. It is an exercise in futility. It is pathetic. It is pathetic. Germany transfers 10 new Leopard 1As, 14 Bandwagon 206s, 5 Warthog ambulances, 1 mine clearing vehicle, 10 Vector drones, and 14 Go-12 radar systems. And has ordered on behalf of the Ukrainians 25 more Leopard tanks, or Leopards, as the Germans call them. Okay, so guys, those are the top line news items that I got for you today. To my guy on YouTube, thanks for hanging out, pal. I hope you're enjoying these. Take care. And I'm going to shut down the YouTube stream.